On the other end of the line, Andrew, how's it going, sir?
Not bad. Not bad at all.
We're trying a brand new app to record audio other than what we usually use, Skype. So it might sound a little bit different, might sound a little bit better, might sound a little bit worse. We're about to find out, but we're going to talk about the Cavs and the Browns. I think that's about it. The Indians, we're just kind of in the waiting game until the playoffs start.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a whole lot to say at this point.
Which is cool.
Yeah. No, I mean this is where you want to be. Like kind of take care of whatever business you want to take care of, and just get yourself ready for the postseason.
All right, so let's start with the Browns because the Cavs are going to be really fun to talk about, I think.
Yep.
I was having a conversation today about just kind of looking into the future, and maybe it's not in the near future, maybe it's the distant future, but somewhere down the line, because nobody has a job in the NFL forever. If you're sitting in a room and on one side of the room is Hugh Jackson, on the other side of the room is Sashi Brown, and you're trying to figure out, well, I can only fire one, I can only keep one. How do you make that decision, and who are you choosing? Because I have an answer, and I want to see if you have the same answer.
Okay. So I part of that cut out, so I didn't totally hear your whole question. But I think you're asking, how do you pick between Hugh and Sashi if you have to keep one? Is that the gist
you
of
have
it?
to fire one. You have to keep one.
All right. Well, so I can't just say let's just keep them both and give them another year. That's not an option. I have to
Hey,
pick one.
this could be 8 years down the road. I don't know.
Well, so I think that obviously the role that they play is quite different. And where you would look for progress in the team. Certainly from the front office standpoint, you kind of assess. Do you feel like the team is getting more talented? Are they doing the right moves to put the team in position where they can, get back to competing and looking like an actual NFL team? So that's kind of what I would look for from some front office moves. And then from the coaching side, it's more, how the talent that he has, how are they responding to the coach, and is the coaching staff as a whole putting the team in the best position to win? And unfortunately, I don't feel like we can say with certainty that either one of those are meeting their goals, that we would expect. I mean, I went into the season, expecting the Browns to lose those first two games. Nothing I saw surprised me in those first two games, but that Indianapolis game was a major letdown. So I guess to specifically answer your question, I would actually at this point maybe lean a little bit more towards keeping Sashi. I think I've agreed a little bit more with the moves that the front office has made. And from the coaching side, I think there's been a lot of moves made that have been, a lot of coaching decisions that are a little bit of head scratchers. So I guess that's kind of where I would lean.
Oh, this is going to make for a great podcast topic because I'm the absolute exact opposite. I recognize everything that you're saying about Hugh Jackson and some of the mistakes he's made, and I've harped on them big time. But at the end of it all, I look at this roster competing against other teams in the NFL all last year and the first 3 weeks of this year, and I'm wondering to myself, but barely wondering, would any coach be able to win with these guys? And I think the answer is no.
Well, I mean, I suppose, but like I really feel like that Indianapolis game was a game the Browns should have won. I honestly feel that watching that, and when I see the way, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. You could say, well, on one hand, maybe the coaches made great adjustments in the second half, and that caused that turnaround. But also, I feel like it was partially on the coaching that that they dug themselves into that hole to begin with. The one big problem I have with the front office is still the wide receivers. The decision to let Terrell Pryor go is a big one that I had a big problem with at the time. And just watching these receivers this year, you cannot tell me that this team doesn't miss Terrell Pryor and that he wouldn't be able to be a big help to this team this year. So that would sort of be the side of it where I would see on that end. But I just I've more agreed, I guess, with the general direction that the front office has taken in terms of, truly stripping this everything down in a way, I think some of the past regimes haven't necessarily done. Maybe Eric Mangini did to an extent, but sort of in a different way. But I still feel like it's kind of a little early for either direction. Like I would still prefer to just kind of let all this play out a little bit more. But if we keep seeing results like we saw on Sunday, I think you're onto something that a decision is going to be made one way or the other.
Well, and I'm with you. I think, especially considering Jimmy Haslam's record, I think he's forced Hugh Jackson and Sashi Brown. Neither one of them might end up being quality versions of head coaches or GMs in the NFL. But the position he put himself in with his treatment of Chud and his treatment of Mike Pettin and even on down the line with Joe Banner and Mike Lombardi and all the moves that he's made, he basically guaranteed these guys 4 years, or should have guaranteed these guys 4 years, because he has something to prove now that he's not going to be impetuous and impatient. And so I think I'm with you on that one. I guess I just look at this team today. I agree with tearing it down to a certain extent. I agreed. I think tearing it down to the point where they barely won one game was a little bit extreme. And I think they make a lot of decisions at the fringes that they're like smelling their own farts, oh, it's a good move. It's a good move in the spreadsheet. And I don't mean to demean the spreadsheet, because I believe in the spreadsheet. But when it comes to trading DeMario Davis and cutting Joe Hayden for those extra $4 million in cap dollars or whatever else, like that's on the fringes where I don't get it anymore. Sounds like you're back.
Okay, I'm back. I lost my internet connection there for a second. Sorry.
Oh. So what was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about the decision getting rid of Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden was the last thing I heard.
Yeah, so just I was saying on the fringes, and these aren't the biggest deals in the world, but they might be the difference between beating the Indianapolis Colts and not beating the Indianapolis Colts. It might be the difference between winning 2 games and winning 1 game, or not winning any games at all. And that's having those fringe players who are quality to your locker room, like DeMario Davis. Tell me they couldn't have used him this week instead of Calvin Pryor or whoever they traded for with the Jets, who got cut for getting into a fist fight. I mean, so it's they're not making earth-shattering mistakes, but I think they're really learning tough lessons about what it means to build a complete team with enough depth to let a head coach compete week in and week out in a grueling 16-week regular NFL season.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of truth to that too. And I think in terms of the way we're both sort of agreeing with points while disagreeing, I think kind of stands to my original point that I don't think either side of this is really meeting, sort of the expectations we had. And I think that's what's, maybe a little disappointing about this overall, because there's a part of you that's just like, how many times can you start over? Like, how is it possible that all these people we brought in to coach and run the front office, like, how is it possible that none of them have been capable at their job? Or are they capable at their job and there's something else going on? And what is that something else? Because, I mean, I know it would be easy to say, well, the common denominator is the ownership, but this precedes Jimmy Haslam, and I don't know how much the owner really impacts overall, the decisions that both sides are making, the coaching and the front office. But to me, I just keep going back to, that's just the real disheartening thing, is that I was hoping to have a little bit more confidence in, well, both, but either Hugh Jackson or Sashi Brown at this point. And I don't feel a lot of optimism towards what I've been seeing by either of them.
No. Well, and I'm in the end, I'm completely with you on being patient because I like I first of all, I disagree with a lot of the stuff that I think Hugh Jackson does during a game, but I think he's really, really trying everything he can to get more out of this team than
Yep.
what they actually have in terms of talent. I agree very much with what they've done in the draft in the end, even though I have hated some of the trade downs and things. And I really
Hmm.
like the prospects of Deshaun Kaiser. So I'm all about that patience game right now, but I think there have been a lot of mistakes on the fringes, and I think in terms of where we get those rumors from Jason La Canfora that Hugh Jackson is frustrated, I'm kind of with
Yep.
the coach on this one,
Yeah.
assuming
Yeah.
those are
I
true.
which I think there's probably a decent chance that there's some truth there. Um, I I don't know. I really don't disagree with what you just said there. I but I would maybe think that there's some frustration with the front office with some of the coaching decisions as well. So I don't know.
No, that
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 the
makes a lot
worst
of
thing
sense.
is the worst thing is if when you don't have success, you start to look around and see like, well, what's going on here? Who's to blame for this? And then the two sides start blaming each other instead of being on the same page. And that's really the real fear, because that's going to make anything completely non-sustainable. And my hope when they went in this direction was that finally we would just have 3 or 4 years of stability where we were going to give this an honest chance. Like, we weren't going to overreact to the hard times. And I was totally on board with that last year, as painful as that season was. I was in no mood to listen to anybody say that any kind of changes needed to be made. Even though I certainly liked the bringing in Greg Williams. I really liked that move, and I supported that. But just in general, between the coaching, the head coach Hugh Jackson and Sashi Brown and his staff, I really would like to see them be able to keep working together for a couple more years. And so that's why I'm trying not to overreact to this, because again, there's some positives to take with the way the Browns played in the second half in that Indianapolis game. It is encouraging that they were able to go into the locker room at halftime and make some adjustments and come back and make that a game. That's great. Um, but at some point we got to get over those little baby steps and really start stringing together some wins. And man, that was a winnable football game. And when you're a team coming off a 1-15 season, you can't piss away those winnable games. You have to take advantage of those opportunities. So
But
that's
at
just
the
where
same time,
where it gets
it
frustrating.
can't shock you that a rookie quarterback doesn't know how to close yet. Like that's
Right?
one of
No,
those
no.
things that you just come to accept when you choose a guy like Deshaun Kaiser to start. You take the good and you really magnify that, and you try and put the bad in perspective as learning experience. And it's really
Yeah, and I
it's
don't.
it's it's the benefit of the doubt that we haven't given to a quarterback in a long time, because there was such an asterisk next to Brandon Weeden because he was so old. The last time we
Yeah,
probably gave a young quarterback this much rope was Colt McCoy's second year.
yeah, and I don't know if you agree or not, but like I feel like whether it's Brandon Weeden, Johnny Manziel, Colt McCoy, Brady Quinn. Um, I personally feel like I had to work a lot harder to talk myself into the positives of those guys when they were playing. Like, the mistakes that those guys made to me seemed more egregious of a quarterback who wasn't. Well, in some cases it was a mental thing, some cases it was a physical thing, but there seemed to be this barrier where they just didn't have it. And the mistakes that Kaiser's making, I don't feel like they're mistakes because he's not good enough to do this job. I think they're a lot more typical mistakes that you see a rookie quarterback who's thrust into the starting lineup for game one of his rookie season make. So, like, when I watch Kaiser play, like, I'm not saying I think he's, a chance to be a Pro Bowl quarterback, but could he be a guy that could settle down the quarterback position and say, look, going into the next 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, we know we have our quarterback at least. Like that's just kind of set. I think there's a chance that he could be that guy.
Yeah, I think it's the first chance, and I don't think we're being crazy. It's not that false hope that some people have had with a guy like Brandon Whedon, or fill in the blank. Certainly Johnny.
Yeah.
There was a lot of false hope. I think there's
Yeah.
legit hope with this guy. I mean, he's got the
Yep.
physical abilities, he's got the pedigree, and he's got the right kind of story where it seems like there was
Mm-hmm.
something really weird going on with his head coach in Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I was saying that's the thing I really like about him, because the easiest thing in the world would be for him to every opportunity he had throw Brian Kelly under the under the bus. And I like the fact that he never really has done that. He's I don't think he's a big fan of Brian Kelly, but
And
he's
if it was Colt
also
McCoy, it would be his dad complaining about Brian Kelly.
right. And to me, I look at the things Kaiser has said and stuff. I think it shows a real maturity and a sense of leadership in the way he's handled all of that. And I really like that potential leadership aspect that he shows on the field as well. So he's got a lot to prove yet. He's looks far from good right now, but I'm just saying, like, the mistakes he makes to me just look more like your normal mistakes that a inexperienced quarterback makes in the NFL. Whereas some of the mistakes some of those other quarterbacks made, it was like, oh, this guy just doesn't have it. And when I watch Kaiser, I don't say, man, this guy doesn't have it. It's, man, if he could clean this up, and which there are a lot of correctable mistakes, and I even look at it in terms of from game one, it was, well, he's holding on to the ball too long. So, okay. So he tried to correct that for game two, and maybe he was almost getting rid of the ball too quick and, made some poor decisions in terms of throwing the ball. But that's what you go through as a rookie quarterback, that push and pull of, when do you get rid of the ball? When do you need to hang on to it for an extra second, step into the pocket, buy yourself a little extra time, things like that. Like, those are all timing things that, I've seen tons of rookie quarterbacks struggle with. So that's just my hope that if he can overcome some of that, I think he can be a capable, NFL quarterback. Again, I don't want to sit here and say I'm projecting, a Pro Bowl or even a Super Bowl winning quarterback or anything like that. Like, I'm not ready to talk about that in any way. I'm just saying from what we've seen, I'm not as concerned with him as I was the other quarterbacks, where I was like, man, I really have to do some mental gymnastics to talk myself into it. And I don't feel that way with Kaiser.
Yeah, and if we're lucky and he turns out to be this good, he can end up being the next Aaron Rodgers. And if we're a little bit unlucky, he could be a non-elite quarterback like Joe Flacco that we have to pay way too much money to. Like, but there are much worse
Sure.
fates in the universe than having to pay Joe Flacco like way too much money. I mean, for every
Yeah.
for every elite quarterback, there are two or three that are like Flacco or Eli Manning that are just kind of good enough that if you really put the great pieces around them and elite receivers around them, they can get you there. Um,
Yeah.
and that's
A
that's
guy like
kind of
Jay
good
Cutler,
enough.
like we Cutler, like what Jay Cutler was. You're telling me from a skill ability that you wouldn't take that. Like, of course we would in Cleveland. So, that's, to me, that's kind of the hope, that you can just be just a stabilizing presence at quarterback. That's the bare minimum, but that bare minimum.
Denver Jay Cutler.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm just saying it's a bare minimum that would be a big step for the Browns.
Yeah, Jay Cutler with less cigarettes or something.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's talk about the Cavaliers because
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of trouble contextualizing all the entire offseason now that it's complete, and I'm starting to think about what this team might look like in the playoffs. Like, I was talking about it with some people today, and I think this team should, for all practical purposes, end up in the finals again.
Yep.
And then I have no idea what happens after that. I think they are deeper, but I think that almost doesn't matter because they have to be able to play like when the three most important minutes of the finals game are on the line. I think they're better off last year with LeBron and Kyrie Irving and whatever role players than
Mhm.
whatever it is they trot out this time. Am I
Yeah.
wrong?
No, I do agree with that, and you know, that's why I said like I kind of touched on it a little bit in my while we're waiting segment this week. Um, I I look at it. I'm not as worried about Boston as some people are. To me, I look at the East and I look at the depth that Cleveland has, and the fact that they still have LeBron James, who is overwhelmingly the best player in the Eastern Conference. I feel pretty comfortable that barring injury, the Cavs should be back in the finals. But when you go up against Golden State, and we'll just say that it's going to be Golden State, although the West is certainly a little bit more interesting this year with the moves Houston and Oklahoma City made. But let's just say it's Golden State. If you want to call LeBron and Kevin Durant a push for the best player on the floor when these two teams meet, I would still take LeBron personally, but I can understand the argument for Durant. So if we just call them a push, the three next best players are all on Golden State, and when you are in a postseason series, when those starters play more minutes, you shorten your bench. You don't bring guys off the bench quite as much. That becomes a big deal. When four of the five best players are all on one team, that's good. That's a big hurdle for the Cavs to climb. And whereas when Kyrie was there last year, I would put if you're going with LeBron and Durant as the push, maybe you go Steph Curry next. I'd put Kyrie Irving after Steph. So, that's a big loss for the Cavs in the postseason. I agree with you completely. The Cavs are. I think the Cavs will be a much better regular season team. The depth that they have is just ridiculous. That you can some of these guys that are older, yeah, but you can play them fewer minutes because there's a lot of guys that Ty Lue can have confidence in to put on the floor. Veteran guys who have played big minutes and big, meaningful, important minutes in their career. So that really will help propel them through the regular season. But when it comes to the postseason, that's where you're really going to miss Kyrie. That ability to put up a 40-point night. Is Isaiah Thomas going to be able to match that? Is Dwayne Wade going to be able to match that? I have my doubts about that. So that's really the concern.
There's only one scenario in my mind where the Cavaliers are absolutely better, and that is if they somehow manage to end up with between Dwayne Wade and Derrick Rose, if they ended up with a guy who can actually carry a second unit, because that
Yeah.
is something that Kyrie just couldn't do, even in the
Yep.
playoffs. And
Yep.
it's something that he's going to have to prove he can do in Boston. And I'm not trashing Kyrie. I'm just saying that when LeBron was off the floor and the LeBron Kyrie Cavaliers teams, it was utter disaster. And I
Yep.
think there's a chance that between Derrick Rose and Dwayne Wade, who have been team leaders of their own before, that that LeBron might actually be able to sit for 4 minutes without the game going to utter chaos.
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing about a guy like Dwayne Wade, and they sort of have that dynamic already in their back pocket from when they played in Miami. That was something that Eric Spoelstra would do from time to time, was try to offset their bench time, to make sure that one of those two was on the floor at all times. And Dwayne Wade is a little bit different from Kyrie from the standpoint. And again, yeah, because I don't want to make it sound like we're putting down Kyrie in any way, but Dwayne Wade has proven that he can carry a basketball team on his own. He's done it quite frequently in his career, and so that's the hope. Obviously his health is going to be a big question. His age is starting to become a question, but in terms of just basketball IQ and just the talent that Dwayne Wade has, that was a huge pickup for the Cavs, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that depth does allow them to sort of mix and match some things, and you know try to hopefully have a situation where everything doesn't just completely fall apart when LeBron goes to the bench, because that's obviously been probably the biggest problem for the Cavs since LeBron has come to Cleveland, is that complete inability to even just neutralize the other team when LeBron went to the bench. I mean, every time LeBron goes to the bench, it's like they just bleed away, the lead or a deficit if they're down. Like LeBron can leave in a tied game, and all of a sudden, 50 seconds later, the Cavs are down 8, and it's just like, what the hell just happened? So,
But Dwayne Wade is also nor neither he nor Derrick Rose are going to play 42 minutes in a playoff game. It's just never.
no,
It's not going to happen.
no, that would no, you definitely can't do that. But that's where you got to hope that Isaiah Thomas, that he doesn't have lingering issues with the hip. That having a healthy Isaiah Thomas, while he does create some problems defensively, he's still a very dynamic offensive player, and he's absolutely a weapon that the Cavs can have, and he's a younger guy that can play a little bit more. So, and Tristan Thompson struggled obviously at times in the playoffs last year, but he's still a young guy that you can depend on for minutes. Jay Crowder is a guy that I think you hope that you can count on, and I see options with the Cavs, and I in some ways don't envy Ty Lue, because it's going to be a tough job to figure out how to work all these pieces together. I think that's
I'm
the
not
one
buying
thing.
that for a second. By the way, I envy Ty Lue. I do. I think he's got a quote unquote hard job. He's got the hardest easy job in the history of NBA basketball. It is hard, but it's also easy because it kind of is. Obviously,
Well,
he can make them better, but he can also roll the ball out there and
yeah,
win 60 games.
I mean, that's true. There's probably like 25 coaches that would gladly swap spots with him. So from that point, you're absolutely right. But I'm just saying, like, I think that there's a chance it might take some time, and that I could potentially see the season starting off a little slow as they try to figure out how to adjust to a very, very different dynamic on this team. And we haven't even mentioned Kevin Love yet. The guy that we keep forgetting. Like, is Kevin Love going to have a bigger role in the offense this year? And is that what Ty Lue wants for him this year? We just
The
got to figure
answer
all
is
that good stuff
no.
out.
The answer is no. He's going to have the same role, and it's going to be really nice, and it's going to be underappreciated, and people are going to wonder why he's not doing more.
Probably.
But but it's super valuable what he does, and
Yep.
he seems to be a really great on the floor teammate for the most
Yep.
part.
Yeah.
He's not selfish. He's willing to pick his spots. They feed him early, and when he's going, he's a monster. And when he's not, he makes full court passes and makes his teammates better.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, absolutely. I've been one of Kevin Love's biggest supporters. I'm a big fan of what he brings to the team, but
And with my answer, I wasn't really even talking to you as much as I was talking to some of his naysayers out there.
yeah, I do just question a little bit though. Um, whether or not they will look to him to be second, the second role in the offense. That's the one thing that could be slightly different. And especially with Isaiah, not being there at the beginning of the year, they really might lean on Kevin Love for a little bit more offense this year. So, I'm just kind of curious to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see too, just because um, the I think Kyrie leaving really changes the dynamic of the way they can run that offense. There's no more question about 1A and 1B,
Yep.
and it's not like, hey, my turn, my turn, your turn, or it doesn't
Yep.
have to be that. And so especially a guy like Dwayne Wade, who's 35, I think there's some benefit to, there's obviously some downsides to having a guy with his mileage at age 35, but there's also some benefit to it as well, because he's got nothing left to prove. His stock for the Hall of Fame is what it is already. It's all just
Yeah.
bonus now. So he can kind of do those things for gravy.
Well, and you look at, we saw what happened when LeBron went to Miami, and when Dwayne Wade was still in his prime, and there was an issue at first, those two trying to figure out how to play that game of 1A and 1B. And it wasn't until really Dwayne really, whether he sort of ceded control or sort of helped LeBron take control of that team. But when the Heat really found their stride was when LeBron took over. And I think that they don't have to go through that this time, because not only just because they've done it before, but again, because you're right, Dwayne Wade isn't the player that he was when LeBron went to Miami. He's a very different player now. And so that there's not going to be an issue of who's running this team. You know, it's still 100% LeBron's team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because on the one hand, I just can't escape that idea that they're worse, but I don't know that they're actually worse. It's
Right. I know. It's weird, right? Like the your brain does a weird thing when you try to grasp that concept, you know. It's like how you can't lose a player like Kyrie Irving and not get a little bit worse, you would seem to think. But I think that based like once Jimmy Butler and Paul George were gone, and then Kyrie asked for that trade, I was really down on the prospects of what the Cavs would be able to do. And I just think that that ability to get Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder was absolutely huge. You know, you look at any of these trades, you even look at the Carmelo trade, and you know all of these moves, that other moves that were made. You look at the return that for Jimmy Butler or Paul George. I mean, what the Cavs did for Kyrie Irving was by far the best of any of those trades. And so, and then, yeah, you get a Derrick Rose that we don't know what we're going to get out of him, but I mean, the guy's been an MVP. We know the talent is there. We just got to kind of see what's left. Adding a Dwayne Wade, they made a lot of good moves in this offseason, and they added a lot of depth. For all of LeBron's concerns about the Cavs being top heavy last year, I don't think they're near as top heavy this year. I, in fact, I would say it would almost be, again, going back to what I said about their matchup with Golden State, it almost becomes a concern if they're too spread out, because you can't play all of those guys in a playoff series.
all right. I got a hot take for you, and I'm not an unreasonable person, so I'm not gonna have it's not gonna be a real hot take because I'll let you convince me otherwise. But based on what we saw last year of Tristan Thompson, I would have traded him for Carmelo Anthony. I would have included him in a deal for Carmelo, and I would have taken my chances with um, LeBron, Carmelo, Wade, Derrick Rose, more so than I would have seen if any of those young big guys could just like become rebounding machines when they don't have to do anything in terms of scoring except for putbacks.
Well, it's definitely pretty hot on the hot take scale.
Is it?
Um, yeah, I think so. Only because the issue with trading Tristan Thompson is what he does bring to the team. I mean, you really focused a lot on what he can't bring to the team, but what he does bring to the team
And what he didn't
is,
bring to the team last year.
but it's just that it's an irreplaceable thing that Carmelo Anthony is not going to replicate any of the things you're losing in Tristan Thompson, and I don't know if he adds enough to make it worth it. I I just never saw a good fit for Carmelo on this team. The way he likes to play basketball, I just didn't think it would work with the way the Cavs try to play. Now, to be fair, the way the Cavs play is going to have to be modified a little bit because they're not as good of a 3-point shooting team as they were last year. So that will change things a little bit. That's certainly fair. But I just I think Tristan is too valuable in terms of, this is a team that doesn't have any bigs, and he's he's that guy who provides you some of that rebounding. He provides you with a little bit of defense, athleticism. He's dependable. He doesn't get hurt. He's always there. So I don't know. I don't really see. I don't think that swapping him out for Carmelo would have made the Cavs better in a meaningful way against Golden State.
Oh man, I disagree. I disagree, and I mostly, and maybe it's just recency bias, but the way Tristan played this last playoffs was really, really underwhelming. And I kind of felt like his entire last season was a step back compared to what he'd done in the championship season. And so I don't know if he was resting on his laurels. I don't have any idea. But it just seemed to me that it was objectively worse.
Yeah, something seemed off, particularly in that Golden State series with Tristan, and I don't exactly know what that's all about, but um, I don't know, like maybe I'm just a guy that's a little bit higher on Tristan than most people are, but I like that kind of I don't know, the just sort of the athleticism, the energy that he brings. Just I think if you take him out, there's just such a hole in that Cavs front court at that point, and I don't have the confidence that Ante Zizic could come in and just do that thing. I don't. I just don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm looking it up right now, and there was a one of the finals games had 3 rebounds, 4 rebounds, and 4 rebounds in three
Yeah,
finals losses. You
yeah.
know, it's just like, dude,
No,
if you're not going to
there's no
rebound,
argument there that he was really, really bad in the finals. He definitely was, and that is a concern. He's not a great matchup for what Golden State does. And the problem with Golden State though is that team can make so many things that shouldn't be an issue turn into an issue. Tristan Thompson should not be a problem point for the Cavaliers, but because of Golden State's versatility and the way that they play, they can make him a problem for the Cavs. And if you could just wipe Golden State out, like the whole LeBron second return to Cleveland would would just it would look so much different. The whole landscape of the NBA would look totally different. I mean, Golden State just freaked everybody out because nobody could figure out quite how to handle them as they were. But when they added Kevin Durant, it just became just a next level of ridiculous. And I think you know, I again. The Cavs were closer in that series. That final series was closer than it looked on. When you just look back and see a 5-game series, you would really think Golden State dominated. But I still go back to that they don't blow that game 4. I think that series really could have had a very different look to it. And
I
so
agree with that.
I'm trying to be optimistic that maybe some of the moves the Cavs did make will be enough to bridge that gap. But I just think Golden State they changed the whole formula for every NBA team, and I don't know. So and maybe I'm talking myself somewhat into your point of view that if that's the case, if that's your only concern is Golden State, and you look at what Tristan did last year, that's was such a negative that what difference does it make? But I don't know. You also it's a big long season and everything's just different until you play Golden State, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the best argument for Tristan Thompson is a financial, and because that max deal when he signed it is now so puny compared to the real max deals,
Sure.
and he's signed longer for longer, and so from that respect I get it, and he's younger.
Hmm.
So from in those respects, but in terms of making the team better from a top down standpoint, I won't listen to anybody tell me that Carmelo doesn't make them better. In
Well,
if your only goal in life was to beat the Monstars, and you're LeBron James and you're picking teams in the gym, you're picking Carmelo over Tristan Thompson 1,000 out of 1,000 times.
I just go, I, and maybe in the same way we're having a little bit of recency bias with Tristan, though. I also just have that a little bit with Carmelo because I don't feel like Carmelo made the Knicks better in any way. And to me, it's been a very long time. early in his career, I thought
But go back to
Carmelo.
my example. If LeBron's picking his team in the gym and he's got Carmelo and Tristan Thompson both sitting there on the bench and he can only pick one, who's he picking?
Well, if nobody else has been picked yet, yeah, you're going to pick Carmelo. Carmelo's a better basketball player than Tristan, but
Which
I'm
is
just
what I
saying,
mean.
like I'm trying to, it's not a necessarily a fantasy basketball situation that, part of building a basketball team.
Matching
Yes,
up with the
you,
Warriors is a fantasy basketball
well,
situation.
that is true. Unfortunately, that's absolutely true. But I think you, there's something to team building as well, and how all the pieces fit together. And I think my thing is, while I'm not willing to say Tristan Thompson in any way, shape, or form is a better basketball player than Carmelo Anthony, that would be absolutely ridiculous to say. I'm just talking about the fit on the Cavs. I think that swapping those two players, I don't feel makes the Cavs better in any kind of meaningful way.
I think that we saw so many times the Golden State Warriors did not have to guard Tristan Thompson and they could shade their defense anywhere where he wasn't. And
Well,
he wasn't getting offensive rebounds.
but you're discounting Tristan Thompson's 3-point shooting this season. Now that he's going to be a 3-point shooter, apparently.
For those who didn't know, Tristan
Uh,
was practicing 3-point shots
just please
after
no.
practice.
Please no. Please no.
This is
Let's
something
not
that
do
like
that.
super duper uber Cavaliers fans will talk themselves into, and
Yeah. Yep.
it won't work. I'll tell
No.
you, if it does, I'll admit I'm wrong. I'm feeling very secure that I'll never have to admit that.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm right there with you. But of all the things I want Tristan Thompson to be working on and to add to his game, 3-point shooting is pretty low on that list.
Oh, man. All right. Well, it was good to chat about the Browns and the Cavaliers. Hopefully, the recording technology we use this evening is sufficient, and we somehow figure out how to get it onto our podcast feed. There's a lot of I've got a lot of nervous hand wringing
Yeah.
in my.
Well, if not, you and I just had a nice phone conversation.
It was lovely talking to you, Andrew.
Yep.
Hopefully, you guys are listening. Until next time, it's been the Waiting for Next Year.com podcast.